Within Africa, radio provides an important platform for accommodating diverse linguistic groups and enabling speakers to express themselves in their own local languages. In this special episode of the book series, we investigate how radio broadcasting across the continent provides a platform for cultural participation and the representation of minority language speakers in a contested public sphere. In African media, a fierce contest wages for representation and participation, in which majority languages often emerge at the exclusion of minority ethno-linguistic groups. In this special episode, we consider the important role that radio can play in broadcasting in minority languages. I called a journalism and media researcher. He is a research fellow and lecturer at Northwest University in South Africa. He was previously a lecturer and research fellow at the University of Johannesburg and at the University of Fort Hare. His new book, African Radio and Minority Languages, Participation and Representation, was published by Routledge, and a copy of it can be accessed on the link that is in the description panel of this video. Enjoy the show. Dr. Limukani, thank you so much for making the time. I'm happy to have you. I understand we were supposed to have done this earlier in the year, but I'm happy that we have gotten an opportunity to do this and to talk about your new book. So thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, Chikumbu, for having me. I appreciate it a lot.
Wonderful. That is great. I understand you are regular on the show. The last time that I was talking to you, I think we were talking about, you had published a journal article about communication and political participation. And today I'm happy that we also have another topic, another book publication from Routledge. And, you know, it's been pretty good to see all that progress that you have been making with academic publications. And I'm very happy to have you. So, yeah, I'll be happy to share some of the links with our audience that I'll put in the description panel so that they can get to see some of your works and some of the issues that you have been writing about. So let us get started with the discussion for the book. I want to give you an opportunity to just give us a breakdown of what you consider to be the core ideas of the book and its central argument.
Yes, so the African radio and minority languages is touching on the concept of the African multilingual public sphere. So the hallmark of the argument is that every public sphere is ethno-linguistic public sphere from Habermas's concept of public sphere, that it is a platform that should be accessed by everyone, every citizen. So if it is a platform that must be accessed by everyone and every citizen, it is also important to know that in Africa, we have got what we call ethno-linguistic groups. So if we are going to be represented, or if we are going to participate on a public sphere, who is going to represent us? And then who is going to participate on our behalf? So which means we cannot ignore the concept of language in the African concept, in the African context. So this book roughly looks at, it selects the platform of radio, because radio is the most accessed public sphere in Africa, because of, we cannot compare it to the internet or the social media, and as much as we are also having a lot of people on social media, but we have to know that analog radio, whether it's digital radio, it's analog radio, it's everywhere. And research has shown that even in those parts where there's no electricity, one can connect to analog radio, one can even so radio is the most accessed medium in Africa, and it has to query into the issues of representation and the issues of participation. These books looks at every ethno-linguistic group, roughly. Particularly the minority ethno-linguistic group, because the majorized or the major ethno-linguistic groups have been overstudied, according to my perspective. So this book finds a gap. It tries to, it calls for that academic consideration for these entities which are not yet fully studied, and these entities are minorities. So for us to even get to the issue of whether minority or majority, then we have to use the terms as majorized or minoritized, because they are factors. We are coming from history. So one can say my language is a minor, and the other one can say my language is a major, and then becomes a debate whether this language is a minor or major. So hence, then in this book, I don't say that a minority language. I say a minoritized language, because the book, it starts by giving an overview of literature, the history of radio. So when it gives the history of radio in Africa from 1920 to 23, because radio was first introduced in South Africa, and then I also look into the factors which shaped the participation and the representation of ethno-linguistic groups on the African radio. So then I come to these terminologies of minoritized or majorized. So let's look at what majorized and what minoritized our languages in Africa. So we cannot talk of Africa without talking of colonialism. Or yes, without talking of imperialism. You see, so the book begins from the colonialism, what we call this concept called monolingualism. You see, the concept of monolingualism, it was started by Europeans themselves. So when they came into Africa, they taught us that there is this Great Britain, where English is widely spoken.
Yes.
So English was a mono. You see. So some of us Africans, we didn't know that in Britain might be some other languages which are sidelined or which were dominated by the English language. But when they came to Africa, they introduced a monolingual system. So when they introduced a monolingual system, and they also promoted monolingual culture within a context of Africa, which was not even monolingual at all.
That's true.
Yeah. Yes. So then they came and promoted those major, what we call the majorized indigenous languages, because those people of that time, if they were politicians or if they were active people, if they happened to speak a certain language, then they actually majorized that language of those actors of that time. You see, for example, a Zulu in South Africa because of Shaka Zulu. For example, Shona in Zimbabwe, before it was mentioned Shona at all, because you must know that Shona was not Shona until this author called Dog named it Shona. But we had this Zulu, we had the Karangas. So Africa has always had this multilingual culture. Africa is multilingual. That's what I argue in that concept, which I named it an African multilingual public sphere, where I say Africa has never been a monolingual context. Africa has always been a multilingual context, because we never had monolingual systems in Africa. We always had multilingual. You see, even the Ndebele kingdom, which came with Mzilikas running away from Shaga, when they arrived in Wabulawayo, they formed what we call a caste system. A caste system which reflected a multilingual context, in as much as they wanted to dominate, but they were other languages which were existing.
Mm-hmm.
You see, in Nigeria, we've got the Yoruba language, we've got the Hausa, Igbo languages. These were majorized from the colonial, the pre-colonial era by the colonialists. Is it Kenya? Kenya Kiswahili was also majorized.
Mm-hmm.
So this book begins by looking at the literature from the pre-colonial times to post-colonial. So now I was only discussing the pre-colonial era.
Yes,
then I'm going to show you how we came into the post-colonial.
Oh, yes.
So for me to discuss the minority languages, I have to refer back to history so that I can give a background of what I want to discuss on.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. I greatly appreciate that a lot. And I want you to continue on that line because I was enjoying that. You know, this is what we were taught. I'm a history person. I teach history a lot. And from what we were taught with the origins of what we call the Mandebele Kingdom, Matabeleland Kingdom, with the coming in of Mzilikazi, the establishment of the Ndebele state, Lobengula stories, we also learn of the caste system. That there were the Abezanzi at the top, the Abentla, we had the Amahole. I'm getting the picture of how it was looking like. And now I'm beginning to understand it from what you say from an ethno-linguistic perspective. So as you continue with that discussion, I also want you to tell us a bit more about the book's contribution to the already existing literature that we have on these issues. The book's contribution to issues of language, literacy, culture, even as it engages media studies. So if you can continue along those lines.
So the contribution, the book is bringing to the fore the contribution to literature in terms of minority languages in the media. Because when we discuss about radio, we don't talk much about minority languages as African languages. So we find that the first African radio, whenever we talk about African radio, we refer to the World War II. World War II, when these imperialists wanted to inform us about our brothers and sisters who were at the war. So in South Africa, they introduced what we call umsakazo, which was during those news bulletins, or what we call the piecemeal airtime, where they would have a 2 minutes news on isiZulu or in Sesotho. You see, and this was the culture all over Africa, because remember, radio it first broadcasted in English, or in other colonial language, whether it's French, depending on the colony, on the context where that country is. You see, so and then the African languages were now introduced during the World War II in those news bulletins, but we don't hear anything about minority languages, minority indigenous languages. We only hear about majorized African languages. You see, so this book is, if you are going to follow it, it is going to show you where and when did minority languages started getting accommodated on radio. You see, and then it's going to give you that context, and then after giving you that context, it is also going to give you the contemporary context of the accommodation or the inclusion or the exclusion of minority indigenous languages, because you have overheard a lot about majorized indigenous languages. Mm-hmm. So this book is going to introduce you to the spectrum of the radio accommodation mm-hmm. of minority indigenous languages. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I argue that minority indigenous languages started enjoying a limited space on radio from the late 1990s mm-hmm. or maybe the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. That's when they started. Remember, in Kenya and Ghana, those were the first countries to gain independence.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. But for minority languages, it really took time for them to be accommodated. So, for example, in Kenya, it was until in the 1990s when they now introduced what we call community radio. Yeah, and then in Zimbabwe, it was 41 years after independence, 41 years after 1980 when they introduced community radio. Actually, other languages which are now officialized, minority languages, they were officialized in 2013.
Oh,
You see.
wait
And
a
then
second.
accommodated.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
So I understand that currently we do have like languages that are defined by the constitution as official languages that are spoken in the country, the context of Zimbabwe. So you are saying this is as recent as 2013? Wow.
Yes. So that's the other problem that we are having, is that the state also perpetuates the marginalization or the exclusion of minority indigenous languages. Because remember, the problem is coming from the Europeans. It's coming from Europeans. They were also learning from Europeans. For example, in Malawi, Kamuzu Banda was the first president. Do you know what he did? He majorized what we call Chichewa before it was called Chinyanja. So he really officialized Chichewa and promoted it to be a national language. In Kenya also they officialized Kiswahili.
Kiswahili, yes.
And then they were thinking that, you know why they were doing so? They were thinking that monolingualism can promote unity.
Yes.
They were trying to get rid of what they call ethnic crisis, or what we call tribalism. Because remember, the word tribalism is always abused. Like what other people, they say I'm a tribalist because I stand for I'm marginalized. Actually, I'm not even those who are tribal are those who do not want to give independence to minority language speakers. You see what I'm trying to say? So now, at the highest level of decision making, that is the state. So they officialized some languages, for example, in South Africa, because this book touches in Africa. So I'm giving cases that
cases across. Yeah, I understand.
Yes, across. So I'm now giving you the context of South Africa. South Africa, they officialized 11 languages. You see, excluding the sign language, and these 11 languages which they officialized. It does not mean to say these are the only languages in South Africa. So they are what we call non-officialized languages, which are not even studied at all. And then by so doing, even the academic community is also focusing on officialized languages. You see, we are also perpetuating marginalization even in academic sphere. You see, we are now focusing on from those who decided this is an official language. This is not an official language. Myself, I come from a very small community of the Dombe people in Zimbabwe. My language is not officialized. You see, but you know why it's not officialized? Because in chapter 4 of my book, I talk about community radio and the patterns of marginalization, linguistic marginalization. I say that even those minority languages in communities, they exercise some dominance over those other minor languages. Because you find that a Dombe language is labeled as a Tonga dialect. So when the Tonga people went to the higher level of decision making, they said, no, don't officialize this language, it's our dialect.
Wow.
You get the point. So it's a perpetuation, it's a pattern of man. It starts from it's the same system.
Yes.
Which starts from there to say, okay, fine. Okay, what if the Zezulus are crying for independence? What if the Karangas are crying for linguistic independence? But you, Chikumbu, you say, no, we are Shona people, don't look for that independence. But if you find the same Shona language you claim to be Shona is a Zezuru, it is dominated by Zezuru. Zezuru terms. Correct me if I'm lying. The Manika are not enjoying their
yes,
linguistic.
my people are from Manika land, so yeah.